All right, we're live on YouTube as well. Let's take a look elsewhere. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jenny Chen. I'm the founder and CEO of 3D Hills. Thanks for joining us today. We have a very important panel discussion on the legal aspects of healthcare 3D printing. And just a little background about what 3D Hills is. I've founded this company, really a community aiming to educate, connect people, as well as discover innovators and startups in the space. Um, and so we've been hosting in-person events before the pandemic many times, like I believe 70 events before the pandemic, and now we're completely virtual. And I'm hoping that this series of webinars will really provide at least the intro information of what you need to successfully fund and grow a company in the healthcare 3D printing space. A little bit housekeeping information today. If you have any questions, please enter into the QA box because we can't keep track of questions in the chat box. And please do actually enter your name, where you're from, and what you're looking for in the chat so that we can socialize a little bit despite the fact that it's virtual and it's not as a deal as in-person events. And in terms of the recording, we will share the Zoom recording for 3 days after the event ends. And after that, we have to move the recording up to an on-demand site that we created. And we will share email. We will share the links of those as well. Okay, so those are the housekeeping. And the other thing I want to mention is that we have an anchor sponsor for our next 20 webinars, including this one by the HP group, HP and HP Ventures. The reason that they're sponsoring us is because we're collaborating in discovering more startups in the space so that they can participate our Pitch 3D and also getting discovered so that you can have a better time fundraise, I believe. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker of the day, Roger Kwong. And Roger is a partner at Haynes & Boone and a chair of precision medicine and digital health practice group. And he consults companies that are uniquely positioned in the convergence of life medical sciences and technology industries on how to successfully navigate the complexities of the intellectual property, data rights, and regulatory challenges they encounter. Roger, I'll let you take away.
Great, thank you, Jenny. I'm hoping everyone can see the slides right now, or?
Yes.
Great. Again, thank you, Jenny. I'm really happy to be here to be able to talk about, I guess, IP rights and data rights protection for 3D printing companies. As Jenny alluded to in her intro, I am a partner with Haynes Boone's San Francisco office, and I chair the Precision Medicine Digital Health Practice Group here. A little bit more about me. Prior to going back into private practice, I was actually in-house counsel for Thermo Fisher Scientific for almost 8 years, where I oversaw IP strategy and implementation across multiple different business segments, ranging from single molecule genomic sequencing to molecular medicine to biomanufacturing. And really, it's that latter piece of it that kind of leads me a little bit more into, I guess, the 3D printing field. So very happy to be here today, and so I'm just going to dive right into the slides, unless any, let's see. So really, respect to intellectual property protection, the way, I counsel clients to view IP protection, especially in the 3D printing space, is to really look at protecting what I term as the 3D printing workflow. So and how to bucket in, I guess, inventions or I guess invention counter within this workflow. So when I look at it from perspective of it being starting off as software design and render of the 3D printed article itself, and any technologies that go into, again, rendering an image of something that you're trying to print into an image file that actually later on is transferred into a 3D printing system, which actually goes ahead and prints out the article. And typically you see innovations in that bucket around the hardware, which is the printer itself, as well as any type of materials, meaning the bio inks, or any other type of materials that are involved in that 3D printing of the article itself. And last but not least, we also find buckets and a bucket of innovation around the 3D printed article itself. One of the reasons why people like 3D printing is such a exciting area, right, within precision medicine is the fact that it could shape these printed articles in ways that are not possible using traditional manufacturing methods. So there could be innovation that you can find in the actual 3D printed article itself in terms of having some certain types of structural features that, again, otherwise would not be possible using more traditional ways of manufacturing the article. So really, as I mentioned earlier, we look at it expansively, the entire workflow. Now, regardless of whether or not your company works only in one part of its workflow, either on the software design, the systems, materials, or article, we still look again to the left and the right of what you're doing to see again if we can capture something, some nugget there as part of I guess the patent portfolio that we're building around to protect what you're doing. So when we look at that workflow, and this is kind of for those that history buffs out there, right, and folks and film buffs who've watched the film 300, we look for what we term as siphon points in the workflow. Again, looking back at for your history buffs at the Battle of Thermopylae, the critical piece here is that they were able to go ahead and one small band of 300 men were able to go and hold the lines against an army of 100,000, right? Because they were able to siphon point the army's movements for this one little narrow pass. Well, really, if you think about it, in a lot of ways, what we want to do in patent protection is the same idea. You want to build strong patents around these siphon points within the workflow, meaning these points, these areas of the workflow where basically any competitors that want to go and move into your space would have to go ahead and go through, right, before they can actually practice what you're doing. So that is that, again, this idea of looking at the 3D printing, protecting 3D printing as a workflow, and also focusing on these siphon points within the workflow. Now, going back to the buckets idea, within software design and rendering of the 3D printed article itself, we typically focus on the improvements to the 3D scanning, imaging hardware, and the rendering and imaging processing software aspects of it, right? And from that perspective, we go ahead and put patent protection around, again, any type of hardware and software improvements that increases, right? And this is critical to this piece, increases the accuracy or anatomical compatibility of the resulting 3D printed article. Because these are distinct business advantages, right? As well, and it's important that whenever you find something you're doing, especially on the software side, that can show that type of improvement, either improvement in accuracy or anatomical compatibility, that we're able to document it as part of the filing to go ahead and again traverse any type of what we term as prior art, as well as any types of patentable subject matter concerns that kind of arise in some of the software spaces. Now, there are situations where you don't patent everything. There are situations where trade secrets are a more appropriate form of protection, even around these areas of innovation. Trade secrets are really appropriate, particularly with improvements that are difficult to detect, reverse engineer, or independently develop. And these are things, again, as when I work with clients, when I sit down, we look at their whatever they've developed or innovated. This is the balance that we kind of always try to have in our discussion. What should we patent and what should we keep as trade secret? And those are those discussion points that are the ones that we balance out to decide whether it falls into one form of protection or the other. And last but not least, trademarks are also very, very useful, right, as IP protection. So it's particularly around trademarks around commercial product names, in this instance, around the system hardware or software itself. And particularly as you build brand, right, and you build a reputation, these trademarks are potentially also very valuable valuable form of intellectual property protection. Now, with respect to claim types, not meaning patent claim types, what do they look like? Well, again, as I alluded to earlier, it would be around claims that are put around the 3D imaging hardware and systems themselves. It could be claims that are put around the 3D printing control softwares, particularly where you have an AI machine learning component to it, which I'm going to go a little more deeper later on, around the image rendering or processing, which would be like, for example, when you do conversions from a two-dimensional image to a three-dimensional image, which is used for your 3D printer, right? Any type of image segmentation software, improvements, filtering, modeling, AI machine learning. All those are very, very fertile grounds to look and try to capture some software design type innovations. And last but not least, any type of 3D computer-aided design software methods and tools. Now, obviously, the CAD software tools have been around for years, but there are improvements. We see that even with some of the clients we work with that are around how, again, you render these images on these tools, and how you and there could be, again, pockets of innovation there as well. With respect to 3D printing systems, methods, and materials, we focus on improvements to how the 3D printing system works, right? Is it something that you're doing on the, I guess, on the printer head? Is it something that you're doing on, again, some sort of, structurally on the instrument itself? That's allowing you to, again, that's a area of improvement that's allowing you to print more accurate or compatible type of, I guess, parts, right? Especially with respect to medical devices and whatnot. We also focus on novel consumables, such as any type of novel raw materials. It could be the powders that are used in metal printing. It could be, again, the bioinks that are used in bioprinting, or any type of associated reagents. So we kind of focus on that pieces. And we'll patent around typically features that are fundamental to the operation of the 3D printing system, and any consumables that have unique properties that enable or improve some aspect of the system, such as, again, print fidelity, reproducibility, etc. Or any type of subsequent application, such as biological properties. So again, going back to these novel consumables, maybe you use certain type of consumables because, again, you're going to implant the printed product into a patient. Well, the printed product, you need certain type of biological properties for it, right? Or it could be some chemical properties, it could be tensile strength, etc. for that printed article. And from the perspective of trade secrets, the same common theme that I talked about earlier with respect to rendering software. You want to trade secret these system features and consumables that are difficult to detect, reverse engineer, or independently develop, right? And same idea around the trademark piece, commercial name, product names for the printing system and the platform, any consumables, all very useful potentially, right? Especially as you build that reputation and brand around what you're selling. Some of the representative claim types in these 3D printing systems and methods would be 3D printing instrument systems and methods themselves, how they operate, and again, all the hardware components that are unique. Any type of critical instrument subcomponents or methods, consumable cartridges, material compositions, reagent kits, etc. All very common types of claims that you'll find when you're trying to protect 3D printing systems, methods, and materials as a bucket. And last but not least, on the 3D printed article itself, we focus on structural improvements and design patterns of the 3D printed article. As I mentioned earlier, 3D printing enables you to go ahead and print certain articles that have designs and features that are unique, right? Uniquely available because you're 3D printing. One area that would be, for example, let's say for on the metal structures that that are used, metal-based orthopedic products, such as a replacement joint or replacement knee, etc. There has been innovation in the past 5 to 10 years, in particular, around printing surfaces that are on these articles that promote bone ingrowth, for example. That's very common, right? And these structures that you're building on top and coating these articles with, it's not possible to do using traditional metal casting, or mold injection techniques, right? You actually have to do it using these powder form, laser sintering techniques, which are again 3D printing techniques. We will also, so from the perspective of patenting around, you patent around the structural elements that I talked about, or design improvements that make the 3D printing article particularly useful for that particular application, which is, I just mentioned earlier, bone ingrowth, better fit, doing tissue regeneration, etc. Trade secrets are the same idea here, right? Where the structural or design improvements are difficult to detect or reverse engineer, an argument can be made that you don't patent, that you keep a trade secret. And again, these commercial product names of the 3D printed article, again, can be very important in part, especially if you can find that the article that you printed out and impart some sort of performance advantage over a non-3D printed article. Representative claim types around these in this area would be claims around the entire 3D printed article itself, right? Or claims around certain features. And I mean, I alluded to this earlier. It can be geometric pattern, geometric structures. It could be certain types of patterns that you're printing on the article, coatings, etc. All very, again, fertile areas for us to go ahead and try to capture some claims that can be useful in protecting the product that you've made. Now, I move on from here to the data rights strategy piece, and I'm sure some folks online are wondering, well, what does data rights have to do with 3D printing companies? Well, it can have a lot to do with it, and that goes back to what I said earlier: is respect that a lot of the software it's used, and also anytime you have AI machine learning type of innovation that's used again to go ahead and create this innovation in the rendering software, or used to create innovation in translating these image files into a printed article using to control a system itself. In order to go ahead and you get hold of these training data sets, you have to make sure that you actually have the data rights still, right, to use in either your software product or actually or any type of control system software you design for your system. Data strategies is a multifactorial type of inquiry. You start out with asking, how do I obtain access to data for the intended purpose? So you don't have to know what your intended purposes are. Is it for development?